Okay, I now call this meeting of the Montgomery County Board of Elections to order. It is Monday, June 26, 2023. We have a quorum present, and I want to welcome Daniel, Keena, and Margie to the board for their first regular board meeting. We obviously had a meeting on June the 5th where we were sworn in. I also want to thank Boris and the staff for a great event on June the 5th for our swearing in, attended by almost 200 people, of a variety of elected officials, former Congresswoman Connie Morella. And anyway, it was a wonderful event, and I know that would not have been possible without a lot of work on behalf of the staff. So Boris, you have our thanks for all of that. As I just explained before the recording came on, our agenda calls for us to have the Board of Canvassers at the beginning. In order to have a quorum for the Board of Canvassers, we need all 4 of the returning board members to be present for that. At the moment, we have 3 out of the 4 returning board members. That's because the 2022 Board of Canvassers included the departing members who are no longer eligible, and we need 4 out of the 7 of last year's Board of Canvassers in order to have a quorum. We're going to go ahead with our agenda, come back to that when we have a quorum for the Board of Canvassers. I believe that the first item on the agenda, other than to declare that we have a quorum present, is for remarks from the board president. Okay, so now I'm getting a message from Ami that I somehow need to connect her. Hang on, folks. Let me see if I can. Kevin, is it good enough for you if she's on a phone from my location?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, hang on, folks. I'll be right back.
So welcome to all our new members. Good to see you.
Thank you, Alex, and good to see you too. How have you been?
Life gets complicated.
Totally understand.
I'm alive and breathing, so that's all that matters today.
Thank you. I've speaking for myself, I've felt so welcomed by every returning member.
Okay, I have successfully gotten Ami on the phone. Ami, are you there?
I am here. I am present. I apologize for the chaos, but the airport.
Okay, has everybody heard that, or do you need her to repeat herself that she is on now with us? Okay.
I heard her, David.
Kevin, if we're going to the Board of Canvassers, I just have to declare that Board of Canvassers is meeting?
Correct.
And then, Mr. Election Director, do you have a ballot to present to us? You are currently muted.
Happy Monday. That's what they say. I have one untimely ballot that I would like to present to the Board of Canvassers. It's a domestic ballot that was received at the end of the May for 2022 general elections. By default, it's untimely as presented by the staff, and I'm presenting to the Board of Canvassers to reject it.
Okay, I just have a question that does not relate to whether it's late or not, but does it have a postmark on it?
No, the only date stamp that we have is the one that was attached by affixed by the staff once it was delivered to the office.
Okay. Under Maryland state law, in order to be considered timely, it has to be postmarked by election day and received by 10 days after election day. This particular ballot, Boris is saying, was received in the month of May, long after the 10 days after election day. Do I hear a motion from a member of the Board of Canvassers? Alex.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Canvassers reject the ballot that the election director has just presented to us as untimely. under state law.
Okay, Diane, do you second it?
Second it. Yes, sir.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those, I'm gonna say this is a little bit of a double negative, but all those who are in favor of rejecting the ballot as untimely, please raise your hand. Or say aye.
Aye.
Ami?
Aye.
Okay, so there are 4 ayes. Anyone opposed? No one opposed. The ballot is rejected as untimely. We will now adjourn the Board of Canvassers. Diane,
Just a quick question, not discussion.
okay?
Since it came to us late with no mail stamp, I think you said, how did it come to us?
It was delivered to us by mail.
Oh, it was, okay.
It
Thank
was
you.
mail delivery, just they didn't put a date stamp on it.
Okay,
And let me add that we learned in conversations with the postmaster in Rockville that where business reply mail is concerned, the standard is not to have postmarks, which obviously is highly problematic for us. We very much want postmarks, and that's probably something for us to communicate with. It might require communicating with the Postal Service, not just with the postmaster in any particular location, because from our perspective, we want every bit of election mail to get a postmark because our state law depends on that postmark. But the fact that it doesn't have one is not unusual according to Postal Service standards, according to what we were told by the Rockville postmaster. Any other questions about that before we move back to the meeting? Okay, so we are now out of the Board of Canvassers. We are back to meeting as the Board of Elections. The first item is the board president's comments. I've already expressed my gratitude about the June 5th event. The only other thing that I wanted to add is that some of you, this is the first meeting where I'm presiding and where we have 3 new members. Some of you may have noticed that there were some minor changes in format to the agenda for today. None of them were meant to be substantively different than what we do. They are merely to be more descriptive about what we do. What I'm trying to do is to make it so that when we publish our agenda in advance, that the public and the board members can have an idea as to what's going on. I'll give you an example. Item 5 on the agenda used to just say disclosure of campaign contributions. It now says disclosure of campaign contributions and attendance at fundraisers. I have not changed any of the rules about, and don't have the power to change any of the rules about what we disclose. Under our current bylaws, we are required to disclose attendance in addition to disclosing contributions. I just tried to make our description of it on the agenda a little closer to what we're doing. But there should be no substantive difference between what we did before and what we're doing now. Diane?
and yeah,
Yes.
on that note, attendance at fundraisers, could we, I guess going to Kevin, it doesn't have to be right now, we have another month before the next board meeting, clarification on
Yeah.
fundraiser? if
Yes,
it-
Kevin is going to discuss the bylaws today.
Oh,
And
perfect.
then,
And it
and
will
then we're
specifically-
not going to act on them until at least next month.
Okay, I just am looking for clarification. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Well, one of the issues for us to consider is that we've been trying to clarify the attendance at fundraisers provision, I think, for pretty much our entire 4-year term, the last 4-year term. And so that might be something for us to look at for the current term as to whether we want to either change the policy or at least clarify what it says, because there's been a lot of ambiguity and questions. I think we've been asking questions about it just about every year since that's been enacted.
Thank you.
But I know that Kevin is scheduled on our current agenda to discuss that. Are there any other additions or changes to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to disclosure of campaign contributions or attendance at fundraisers. I'm going to disclose one for myself. And if I understand the current rule correctly, and I'm sure that Kevin will fill me in if I don't, a attendance at a political party fundraiser as opposed to a candidate fundraiser does not require disclosing the amount of the contribution. It only requires disclosing attendance at the fundraiser. And if that is correct, I will just say that I attended the Maryland Democratic Party Gala honoring Steny Hoyer that was on Thursday, June 22nd. It's a matter of public record as to whatever it was that I paid, but I honestly don't remember the exact amount, but I did attend that on Thursday. Are there any other board members who would like to disclose either contributions during their board service or attending political fundraisers during their board service? Kina?
Yes. I attended a political event for Delegate Charkoudian on June 15th and made a contribution to her campaign.
Okay, now for a candidate on the ballot, you're supposed to tell us the date and the amount.
The date the contribution was May 31st. The date of the event attended was June 15th.
And the amount.
$50.
Okay, thank you. And I also thank you for using your electronic hand, which makes it really easy for me to see that you have your hand raised. I'm going to try and see people whose hands are raised without their electronic hand, but it pretty much slaps me in the face if you do it with the electronic hand. Kina, did you have anything else to report? Okay, Daniel.
Just wanted clarification, Mr. President. So these are contributions made after becoming, after being sworn in as a board member, is that correct?
It is either contributions made after you're sworn in as a board member or fundraisers attended after you're sworn in as a board member.
Okay.
In Kina's case, she made the contribution before she was sworn in as a board member, but she attended after she was sworn in as a board member.
So given those two qualifiers, then I didn't make any contribution, but I attended a political event honoring Senator Ben Cardin.
Oh, yes, actually, I attended that event too. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I'm glad of that reminder. That was, I believe, a week ago Saturday. Does that sound right? So that would have been the 17th of June. That was also a political party event, not a candidate event. Senator Cardin is not running and the money didn't go to Senator Cardin. But thank you for that, Daniel, because you're keeping me out of trouble, which I appreciate.
That will be part of my job, Mr. President.
Well, and vice versa, Mr. Vice President. So I appreciate that. Does anyone else have any contributions or fundraising events to report? Diane, I do understand when we get to Kevin's presentation, there are a lot of different questions relating to that particular requirement that I think we all would have, and we can discuss both in the board meeting and individually outside of the board meeting as to what we think the rules should be for that. I'm not sure if, given that all of us come through all of us are recommended for our jobs by the political parties. I'm not sure what is accomplished by having us talk about our political party contributions, but that is the current rule. And so we are complying with it, and we can decide whether that's of relevance, as we're deciding our bylaws for the coming 4-year term. Okay, so moving right along, the next thing on the agenda is public comments. Boris, are you going to announce, or is Lisa going to announce who has signed up for public comments?
I will announce it. Lisa had to step out. We have Mr. Michael Fletcher, who announced that he would like to address the board, and he submitted his comments in writing that were shared over the weekend.
Yes, which we received. So, Jerry, if you would please promote Mr. Fletcher to be a panelist, and while you are doing that, actually, I'm going to wait because I want him to hear what I have to say rather than say it while he's being transported from the attendee list to the panelist list. So is Jerry moving him from the, promoting him to the panelist?
Jerry is waiting for Mr. Fletcher to respond.
Oh, something just happened. Okay. There he is. Mr. Fletcher, if you can hear me, if you would please unmute yourself and turn on your camera, that would be great.
I've unmuted myself, but hold on a second, my computer's telling me I need to allow my camera to be turned on.
There you go. Okay. So welcome, I should say welcome back to the Board of Elections. And I wanted to say before I turn the floor over to you that we thank you for your past service as an election judge. And that we also know that I remember seeing you as that you were observing early voting. I believe it was in the general election that I saw you at Sandy Spring. I don't remember if it was the general election or the primary, but I think it was the general election where I saw you at Sandy Spring. And I also know that you are one of our regulars. You attended our manual audit on February the 13th, and you attended our swearing in on June the 5th. So we appreciate your continued interest in our work, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
May I just interject for a second, Mr. Fletcher? Mr. President, should we just make a note about the public comments rules?
Oh, yes. I thank you for that reminder. And this is not just for Mr. Fletcher. This is for anyone who's doing public comment. If you sign up for public comment on our website, it will tell you that the limit of time for addressing the board orally is 3 minutes. We are going to attempt to give you a 30-second warning at the 30-second mark. And when you get to the 3-minute mark, we're going to ask you to please finish your sentence so that we can move on to our agenda and to any other speakers who we may have.
Fair enough.
Okay, thank you.
All right, tell me when the clock starts.
It starts when you start.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to congratulate the new and returning members of the board for their appointments. And I wish all of you a wealth of success in keeping our elections free of corruption and fair to all eligible voters. Now for my comments. The National Voter Registration Act, NVRA, notes that it's the duty of federal, state, and local governments to promote the exercise of the fundamental right to vote. And the State Administrator of Elections, the past one, Introduction to the State of Maryland Plan for Implementing the Help America Vote Act, HAVA, includes the following statement. Although HAVA increases responsibility for election administration at the state level in order to establish consistency across localities, the State Board of Elections acknowledges that the local boards of elections are charged with the conduct of elections and are critical to the election process. In recent years, there has been an effort by the federal government and certain state governments to centralize the voting systems in the United States. These efforts have been characterized as improvements or national security enhancements, but the effect is to diminish the ability of local jurisdictions to manage local elections. Some examples follow. The Albert Sensor System. The Albert Sensor System is connected to the Maryland State Board of Elections computer system. It collects traffic flowing in the election network and transmits this data to a nonprofit organization in New York State. It is a black box because the states and counties are given no dashboard to see activity, no reports on what was captured, not even what Albert observed. In 2019, the election data accumulated by Albert was moved to the Amazon cloud service. So now our election data can leave a county via the State Board of Elections, travel to parts unknown, possibly even overseas, and now Amazon has access to our election data. There are efforts in various states to implement universal mail-in voting. I know there are various definitions of what that means. I'm talking about mailing ballots to every voter on the voter rolls. This should be resisted because it leads to millions of ballots circulating within the US Postal Service. As you know, there has been an effort in recent elections to count ballots instead of voters. So thousands of ballots that do not arrive at a voter's residence.
30 seconds mark, Mr. Fletcher.
All right, may be collected and voted. In Maryland, a voter must request a mail-in ballot before one's mailed out. This should be retained, and efforts to implement universal mail-out voting should be resisted. At the direction of the NVRA, Maryland has implemented a statewide electronic poll book. This probably was a net improvement over paper poll books and county-by-county voter roll maintenance. However, it is a centralized system that is connected to the internet.
Fletcher, your time is up.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Fletcher, I just wanted to thank you for coming. I also wanted to say that we understand that, or at least I understand, that our February 27th, 2023 meeting information included a letter from the state administrator and an attachment about Albert sensors. And I know that you didn't necessarily get a chance to talk about it in your oral statement, but you have provided some information that our staff is currently reviewing concerning the voter list, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. And we thank you for appearing today.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone else? Oh, Alex, before we get on to anyone else who may have signed up for public comment.
Mr. President, I just had a question about what Mr. Fletcher was talking about, the poll books being connected to the internet. My understanding is that is not the case, but I could be mistaken.
I had heard similar to you that it was not connected. I would want to direct that question to Boris and the staff to answer either now or later if it needs to be. But go ahead, Boris.
In very short terms, if we are talking about election day poll books, with which Mr. Fletcher is making reference to in his letter, those poll books are not connected to internet at all.
So would it be the case, Boris, that the precinct registers that are on those poll books are stored locally on the poll book device itself at each precinct? Is that correct?
Yeah, the data is uploaded to the poll books prior to the election day.
Onto those particular machines is, I think, what Alex is asking.
That's
Not via some Wi-Fi network or
it's uploaded to every single poll book that is dispatched to 231 polling places that we had for the 2022 general elections.
Okay, Alex, are you done?
I am. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, Diane. Diane, you are mute.
You're mute, Dan.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah, it just took me a minute to get the right one. Boris, if these are not connected to the internet, if this is stored on the system, how during voting, if somebody goes to an early voting site, does that information connect to the other poll books in the county?
Okay. There were two questions. What I answered was for the polling, for the election day, 231 polling places. When it comes to the early voting sites are connected. They are sync poll books to each other and to the state through the network that's established for that process itself. So this is the way we prevent people from walking from one early voting site to another and casting multiple votes. So once you vote at one early voting site, the data is uploaded and is synchronized across early voting sites, so you cannot vote twice without being noticed.
And that is without the use of being connected to the internet?
Yes. Yes, what is established is separate network just for the early voting process.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else before I ask for other public comment? If anyone else who is an attendee wants to make a public comment, you would need to raise your hand so that we know that you're interested. Otherwise, we will, well, let me first say, was there anyone else who signed up, Boris? The only one I had heard about was Mr. Fletcher.
Mr. Fletcher was the only person who signed up in advance to address the board.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody among the attendees who wishes to be heard by the board? Okay, seeing none, we will move to the director's report. Boris, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The director's report was shared with the board members on Thursday. It was posted on our website, still there, will be there under today's meeting. I will just go through it and answer if there are any questions. The report starts with listing the materials that were distributed to the board and the dates, including draft minutes on June 16th, just like the agenda, and the director's report and the action items as were distributed on June 22nd. From the previous board meeting, we had 2 action items. One of them is ongoing monthly requests by the board for the outreach calendar to be shared with the board members, which was provided, and outreach talking points. This is an action item from May board meeting. Also, it was shared with the board and it's posted on our website under today's board meeting. When it comes to current voter registration statistics, as usual, we share with the board and the general public voter registration statistics for the previous month. The report for May 2023 was shared with the board members on June 6th and indicated that we had 679 and 139 active registered voters, 58,980 inactive, with a total of a bit over 738,000. I just made a small reference in a state board of elections section, saying that the state board unanimously selected Mr. Jared Demarinis to serve as the next administrator of elections for the state of Maryland. Mr. Demarinis will take over the post on September 1. When it comes to personnel, I just wanted to report to the board a follow-up on my previous reporting in regards to administrative specialist 2 finance position. We had to re-advertise this position. We conducted the first round interviews. We selected the candidate. Offer had been extended. Offer was not accepted, which means that we are working with the HR and the ad will go up again. We will keep the ad open on the county website for a month in order to, in the summer period, attract as many candidates as possible for this position. We also completed the interviews and selected a candidate for IT Tech 3 position who also declined. We conducted additional interviews and selected a candidate. Onboarding is ongoing. We have received, we are processing the list of the well-qualified candidates for Tech 2 position, and the interviews should start hopefully this week or the next week, depending on the panel's availability. Temporary positions, we are still, we have a very limited number of temporary team members with us. In the later part of my report, I also report that temporary staff that's currently helping IT will part ways at the end of the month. They'll be back once when the business process requires, based on the State Board of Elections timeline. When it comes to the budget section, I just reflected very briefly that the County Council did approve budget for fiscal 24 in the amount of $12,661,461. The appropriation of the funding is split a bit under 5 million for the personnel and 7.7 million for the operating cost. The county council also approved the supplemental appropriation for fiscal 23 in the amount 4.2 million as previously reviewed and approved by the board. When it comes to the expenditure, we shared the budget overview with the board, and those expenditures were in line with the expectations. When it comes to the section activities, water services, we continued our daily ongoing list maintenance activities on water registration lists. That includes like processing all incoming records provided directly by the voters or through MVA, any records we received through DHMH, jury commission courts, or through ERIC. We continue providing support to municipal elections. The schedule of those municipal elections was shared at the previous meetings with the board. I think there was one addition in Laytonsville. They had special elections because they had a tie for the mayor position, so they had to organize them again. Additionally, in line with the House Bill 410, we are compiling the list of officials at the municipal level that the adopted bill requires us to contact or inform every time the board decides to review polling places in the county. When it comes to IT section, IT staff is doing the quality checks on the equipment that's in the building. Currently, we are going through the voting booth, separating those that are okay, those that need to be fixed, or those that cannot be repaired. We do the regular charging of the equipment as prescribed by the manuals and the state. We continue our work with TAPS our IT manager continues work with the TAPS to implement a solution to replace what we had before in regards to election resource management, meaning intaking applications for the voters who apply to serve as election judges, processing those applications, doing allocations. When it comes to operations section, we are doing a consolidation of the space and the equipment that we have. We are currently dealing with the blue bins, those empty ones and those with the ballots in them, organizing the warehouse the best possible way we can do. We did make a visit to polling places that we used last year and check the cellular signal in all of them, checking options what we can do to enhance them in the polling places where it might be difficult. Also,
Can I stop you right there for a second,
Yes,
Boris?
yes.
When you're referring to checking the cellular signal, that is so that we can communicate with election judges and vice versa. That is not for the machines to be able to communicate
No.
by a cellular signal.
You're absolutely correct. So our goal is what has been the practice for the last couple of cycles. Ever since the cellular phones took over the society like everyone else. They are the main mode of communication. And we just wanted to make sure that every building that we use, we will be able to use those phones to communicate back and forth with the chief judges. We had a poor signal in a number of locations, and we are working with our Verizon providers to obtain extenders. So when election judges use their phones, they can reach out to the board easily, and board can reach out back to them. So this has nothing to do with the poll books. This is ongoing daily communication between the help desk board on one hand and the polling place chief judges on the other.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. We also, as board was previously informed, outside of every polling place, we place vote here signs. We are looking for the different options, how to replace the current signs that we've been in use for the last couple of cycles. The main concern, of course, has been the transport, and we are looking for possible solution that will enable us to actually pack them in the black cars that are dispatched to the polling places. So we will take the necessity to acquire separate transport out of the equation. So that's something that we are looking on our end, basically to simplify the process, but continue the same level of notification services at the polling sites. The operation team, as before, I don't know if Kevin would have any news on that. They are awaiting the court ruling that will give us a green light to start shredding 2020 election material because we are running out of storage space. So that's the reason what I reported earlier. We are talking about blue bins, moving them around, shrink wrapping them, trying to use every square foot of the warehouse that we can. When it comes to recruitment and election support, as I said, the outreach is ongoing activity. We finalized outreach through the schools because the school year is over. We are attending all the public events that are happening throughout the county, and that's the election outreach calendar would indicate. Any application that we receive in the process is being processed by the staff that is in the office. Maybe the last comment about the Mayo conference, which started on the day of the last board meeting, June 15th. A number of team members attended the conference for a few days. It was a good opportunity for all of us just to meet our colleagues from other jurisdictions, to meet colleagues from the state, touch upon a couple of issues that are obviously a common concern. As I said in my report, I was asked to be on the panel that focused on diversity and meeting Section 203 requirements. How do we hire bilingual judges? What is our success rate? And what's our practice that other counties can compare? That would be a director's report, closed with the announcement of the next board meeting, which I believe, as was earlier decided, is July 31st this year.
Yes, I will just repeat that because I'm sure we're going to say it a few times today. But our next meeting will be July the 31st. It will not be our typical time during the month. We are allowing our hardworking elections director to actually, leave town for a bit. So
Thank you.
For a well-earned vacation. Alex.
Mr. President, I had a couple of questions related to the budget and one related to the personnel item. If it would
Go
be
right ahead.
for me to proceed at this time.
Yes, go right ahead.
Regarding the budget, I noticed that it was for other professional services. We budgeted $1.5 million. We ended up so far spending $2.5 million. If you could remind me or let us know what the reason for that overage was. And then I also noticed for let's see, other professional services? No, it was bulk mailing, central duplicating. We budgeted 40,000, but we spent 547,000. I wondered if our election director could elaborate on those if he has the information.
Okay. Sorry for this. The first one, other professional services, where the budgeted amount was 1.5, actual spending was 2.5. This is the amount that was spent to cover the stipends for election judges. The initial amount was planned for the one election. Due to the move of the election day, we ended up covering the cost of two elections within one budget line. Therefore, one budget year.
Because it moved from one fiscal year when it was at the end of June to another fiscal year when it was in July.
That's correct. So we end up with covering expenses for two cycles within one fiscal year, and therefore we are well over this budget line, but that was as expected as it could be. When it comes to bulk postage and mailing, we tried to address this issue in fiscal 24, and this is something that will be addressed as we going forward. We did, I remember I spoke to the board members about something we'd like to refer to as right sizing our budget. And that's the conversation that we are having with OMB. $40,000 of bulk spending for postage was historical amount that used to be okay for the board. Elections have changed, mailing and postage has increased with the vote by mail and everything that's came along. So going forward, we all know the reason why we spent so much our goal is to get to the point where our actual forecast meets much closer the actual spending, because you are, Alex, completely correct. Our actual plan represents some 10% of actual spending, and that's something that we would like to address going forward.
So Boris, would it be correct to say then that the bulk postage was principally due to the charges made against our board for all the mail-in ballots that were sent and received, I guess?
We had all ballots that were sent and received. You would have to reflect all the sample ballot part, and you also have to reflect the fact that after redistricting, voter notification cards went out to every single voter in the county. We are talking about 700,000 mailers that went. Yeah. So voter notification cards, sample ballots, plus all the voter notification cards that take place regardless of redistricting whenever someone moves or something like that. So expenditures for the post-census year were huge.
All right, good. Thank you for that. Do you expect, given that the fiscal year is ending later this week, that with the supplemental that we will end up in a zero or net positive position budget-wise, or where there would still be some deficit, do you think?
We should be on a positive end. At the end of
So
the
if we have a surplus, does that free up money that we could spend this coming fiscal year, or does it get returned? How does that work?
It goes back.
It goes back. Okay, understood.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That's right. My only other question, Mr. President, of the election director was, I did notice under his personnel heading that we had two candidates who were given offers who declined the position after the offer was extended. Is there anything that our election director might be concerned about as to the reasons why the positions were declined, or is there something we're doing or not doing? Maybe it's just unique to each individual. I don't know.
If I can make a broader comment, what we are experiencing here is not unique to the Board of Elections. It's well spread across the whole county government, I would say. I believe that all you have read, heard about high number of vacancies that county has that are on the books. Last time when I tried to check, I think that if I remember properly, official unemployment rate in the county was 1.6%. And hiring finance people and IT people and requiring them to be in the building when the market is widely open for these two professions will not be an easy task. So we are aware of that. As I said, we keep going, we keep advertising, expanding possibly the pool. So we will see. But this is the problem that we have, and I think the whole county has, and it will be specifically relevant for these two positions, because finance and IT is something that there's a market for those skills. Let's put it this way.
Right. Okay. Thank you. No easy answer to that. So, Mr. President, I have no further questions, and I thank you for giving me the time.
Okay, thank you, Alex. I do have some follow-up questions for what you just said, Boris. Is it a requirement of both the finance and the IT position for us that they be in the office a certain number of days? Is it 5 days a week that they're required to be in the office, or is there a telework option for some of that?
So we might be a bit specific agency within the county government. In a non-election year, sometime from May to September, we try to exercise telework up to 2 days a week per team member. After September, we are all back in the office full-time throughout the whole election year as well. So
that's regardless of position.
Regardless of the position, because we are a small agency, and the fact that you might be in finance, in admin, in voter services or IT, doesn't mean that you don't get pulled to help on the other sections and when there is a requirement. So we are a bit particular in that sense. Our work cannot wait. if we have, for example, in the election season, if we receive 5,000 ballots in one day, I can tell you right now, everyone, including me, admin, operational, finance, will be removing the privacy sleeve so we can scan those envelopes. So that's why we all have to be in the building.
And is that part of what is making it difficult to hire people in fields where they traditionally have more telework options? The IT field in particular seems to come to mind for that.
I cannot answer that directly because I didn't have like a exit interview with the candidates who declined the positions, but I would assume so because I believe there is a trend out there for these two positions to be more telework based than office based.
And how do our salaries compare to others in those fields?
I think that when it comes to our salaries, they are county across the county. They match that grade, that scale. I'm not sure that in a employment market with 1.6 unemployment rate, that government is necessarily very competitive, maybe to some other businesses. But I have to look at that. I cannot.
Okay, and that may be worthy of a longer conversation, because if we are asking people to do more in the office than they would if they had comparable jobs elsewhere, and we're paying them less, that may not be the best formula for getting the best people. And so I understand that we may not be able to say to someone, oh, no problem, you know, everyone else in the office is coming to the office and you can stay home and work from home. But we want to be competitive with other employers to the extent that we can.
That's correct. There's an angle. As I said, I didn't really dig deep into this one. We will maybe know more after the next round. Many individuals in these two professions are contractors.
Right.
By default, they forgo their benefits to enjoy the higher salary. And that is very hard to translate when you come to the government setting where you enjoy the benefits, but that's also reflect on the salary end. So
Sure.
that's the part of the private market that contractors meet at the permanent employment, and there is a mismatch there. But
Okay.
again, I didn't really look too deep into this,
Sure.
but we will.
Sure. Well, and I thank Alex for honing in on this particular issue, because I think it's an important one. A couple of other things, Boris. I did not mention this to you, so it's on me, not on you, but the board has previously voted to have the website be on the agenda every month. And I'd like to continue that. And I don't remember exactly when we voted it. I can produce that if it would be helpful. But I think that it's of great interest to a number of people on the board. Changes that have been made or that need to be made, that kind of thing. I thought of that when you mentioned that we were putting the outreach calendar on every month. And I think the website should be in a similar category. As far as the outreach calendar goes, the calendar that we were given did not include any activities on some of the upcoming holidays, such as July 4th, Labor Day, and Veterans Day. All of which would strike me as being potential opportunities for election-related outreach. And I didn't know if that meant that those activities just aren't listed or whether we aren't doing activities on those days.
My understanding is that we don't have activities on those days.
I'm sorry, we do or do not?
We do not. Our main outreach contact person, Dr. Gilberto Zelaya, he will be on leave this period. And there's when it comes to big events like this, I hear that the proposal to be out there. I think that we are out there quite a bit. I also believe that staff gets to celebrate 4th of July as well, like everyone else. But I hear you, something that we could look going forward to address on all the major holidays that are listed.
Well, we should include that when we do have our discussion of outreach. Let's talk about that. I mean, I definitely understand the desire for staff to celebrate holidays, and I'm not suggesting that every single holiday is in this category. But the ones that I mentioned, July 4th, Labor Day, and Veterans Day, I would think would be particularly amenable to to our outreach activities. I'm quite sure that in election years, the politicians are out for those days, and sometimes in the non-election years as well. And if there are opportunities to register voters, find election judges, et cetera, I would think that it's an opportunity that we might not want to pass up. And I do realize that Dr. Zelaya needs his time off, but we have more than one person who's doing outreach, and I would think that we would consider that as as part of our discussion. But like I said, that could be part of our upcoming discussion. And then my last thing is on the vote here sign, which I gather that the concern is that those are kind of heavy. And if I understand the signs we're talking about, the kind of the orange signs that are on like a stand to go with it. And I guess my only question about that is, are you going to be able to find something that is as easy to spot? Because those signs are quite easy to spot.
That's the goal. The goal is to keep the signs at the level that they are easy to spot, make them lighter, and make them to fit in the black cards, so we can send them out with the rest of the materials that we are sending to the polling place. If at least the returning board members would recall, we went back and forth on this topic when we were putting the budget for fiscal 24, where we have to follow the county procurement procedures, which increases the cost of transport costs of these signs going out. So at this point, we are just reviewing the options, trying to do like mock packing to see what fits. Would it be easier to be used by the election judges? So if we are successful, we will have the signs that are visible, signs that can go out with the black cards, easily installed, and we will cut the cost.
Sounds great. Any other questions about Boris's director's report? Okay. Oh, Margie.
Hi, I just had one small question about the outreach calendar. Is this calendar, like, is it one that gets updated and then there'll be like new events and stuff, or is this like a more stagnant calendar?
So outreach calendar is like a living document. So we do look for the options on whole host of those events. We do apply to get the spot. We have to go through the process to procure the table. So events are added continuously. Therefore, the outreach calendar is shared with the board every month. It's not like one calendar that covers the rest of the year. And the same calendar is posted on the website for everyone who is interested to check, and they would like to find a place where they can visit our table and register.
Okay, great. And then sorry, I realized I had one.
Just one thing. So any request that comes our way that we can include in that calendar ends up being added to that calendar as well.
Okay, great. And my only follow-up question to that is I see there's a lot of events in Silver Spring. Is it just because they seem to have more events in that location, or there's a higher population of people? I was just wondering.
So if you don't mind, I would leave that question for Dr. Zlaev when he comes back. I know that on the end of each year, we provide a total number of events that we organized per zip codes through the county. You are right there. When it comes to the community events, some regions of the county are more active than the others, and we end up being maybe more present, but we do balance it out throughout the whole year per zip code.
Hey, Boris, if we could have that list sent to the current board the last time we did that list, so not a new list, but If it was done at the end of 2022, I think that would be, yeah,
You mean the overview of number of events per distribution per zip codes?
exactly.
Yeah.
I think that would be useful. And I think that we were talking about having a more detailed discussion of outreach at our July meeting.
That's correct.
If you have other questions relating to outreach, make your list, because that's not, that's next month's meeting.
Yeah,
So,
and I will share this distribution per zip code just for the newly appointed board members. After each election cycle, the staff prepares the overview for the board, and this is part of that overview that is presented. I think that we did presentation in January or February this year. I can't remember from the top of my head, but early in the year we did it.
yeah, and I'm quite sure that you sent it to me, but if you could send it again when you send it to the others, that would be great.
I'll send it to the whole board.
That would be great. Anything else for Boris? Okay, we go to the attorney report. Kevin.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. Let me start with, Boris had mentioned some struggles with space in the building. And just for the new board members, there's a lawsuit that's pending, Gibson et al. Versus the State Board of Elections, with I think 22 counties that have been named as defendants. This is in conjunction with the 2020 election. And the allegation is that money was given by the Center for Tech and Civic Life, and that there was election fraud associated with the monies that were given. I want to assure you that there's no evidence that would suggest that occurred in Montgomery County. But part of the relief they are requesting is the retention of the 2020 election materials, which normally, as a matter of course, under federal law, would have already been disposed of and would have freed up some space in the building. That suit was filed in our United States District Court for the District of Maryland. It was dismissed by Judge Gallagher under Rule 12b-1 for lack of jurisdiction, and it has been appealed now to the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit, and is awaiting briefing. I've consulted with Dan Corbin, who's the assistant attorney assigned to the State Board of Elections, who's going to take the lead on doing the brief for not only the state board, but for all the local jurisdictions. So when Boris referenced that there's lack of space in the building, that's because we're holding on to materials from 2020 pursuant to the court's order that at some point, knock on wood, will get resolved, and that will free up some space for other things occurring in the board. So that's the Gibson case. In connection with the bylaws themselves, I'm going to go ahead and send you a memo just outlining some observations, but I'm going to hit sort of some highlights. There are a few typos that I found this morning going through it. We're not going to waste our time going through those. But so let me hit the bigger ones, which is there needs to be a change to 3.1A, which addresses that the board is to meet at 2:30 on the third Monday of each month. Really, I've talked to David about this. I don't see why the time needs to be really included in the bylaws, given the fact that we give notice as to when the board meetings are going to be held. But if the board is not going to meet at 2:30, that needs to be addressed. I would also recommend that under 3.2B5, which says members may participate and vote in meetings by phone or video conferencing. Meetings may be held exclusively by phone or video conferencing when required by exigent circumstances, which only underscores how old these bylaws are, since we hold almost every meeting virtually now. So we probably need to clean that up to go ahead and make sure that that is not an issue. With regard to 4.2, I really would appreciate it if all the board members take a deep dive and look at 4.2, which relates to political activities. And this is, David is correct. This has been a source of confusion, and quite frankly, when the bylaws were passed in 2019, I don't think and I'll assume responsibility for this. I don't know that we captured what was intended. by the board with regard to the restriction on political activities. I think what the board wanted was that there to be a disclosure when there is participation or contributions as it relates to either particular candidates and or questions that will appear on the ballot. So really the question being, you know, does someone have a potential issue if they've donated a substantial amount of money to a particular candidate or on a particular ballot question, and or they attended a substantial number of fundraisers that were not political party fundraisers. They were for a specific candidate where they gave money and attended fundraising issues. And so when you look at 4.2B3, and it's ultimately the board's decision, but I don't think that the board really intended that a member may attend campaign fundraisers held by candidates. And I think what got included, which was not necessarily at least the intent of the last board, political parties or ballot issue committees, provided the member discloses this fact to the board and does not publicly indicate that he or she is a member of the board. I think it was really intended to address candidates and ballot issues and not necessarily going to a political function, because obviously all of you are actively involved in your central committees, and the bylaws provide that you are permitted to attend central committee meetings and interact with the central committee. So it would naturally flow that just as a matter of course, you know, giving money to a political party as opposed to a specific candidate or ballot question. The board may want to revisit whether that's really what was intended.
Kevin, there's also some other ambiguity there because it refers to campaign fundraisers. And while I have interpreted it for myself as anytime I give to a political party at a fundraiser, that's a campaign fundraiser, that there's a definitional question about whether the money goes towards a campaign. And then there's also organizations where it's not clear if they're affiliated with the political party or if they're separate from the political party. And that adds some additional ambiguity as well.
Well, I agree. And I think we need to clean up what is truly a campaign fundraiser as opposed to a contribution to the party, which is not necessarily tied to any particular candidate or position the party may take on a question.
Are we still in the situation that we were 4 years ago where the state board said to us some version of you can do A or you can do B, but doing nothing was not an option? That's what I recall from 4 years ago.
Well, yes, I think we are, but you know, times change, people change. We have a new director of the state board. It's going to take his position in September. I will tell you, when these bylaws came about, when they initially, and this was, you know, 15 years ago or so, the state's position was, you know, these are the bylaws. Nothing's really, there's very little that was subject to change. Over the years, they have at least been more receptive to allowing the board to go ahead and make some changes that they feel more comfortable with. So if after the board reaches a consensus on how they wish to proceed with regard to this issue, certainly I would talk to Jared and get a feel for whether that's going to be any resistance from the state board on that or not.
Okay. Now, as far as the bylaws are concerned, are they more like minutes or where we can discuss it electronically, or are they more like meetings where we cannot?
They're more like meetings where you cannot.
Okay. So basically, we're going to have a series of one-on-one conversations in order to figure this out, or we're going to discuss it at a board meeting, meaning the one in July.
I think, yes, both. I think there are going to be some one-on-one discussions, and I think this needs to be revisited again at the July meeting after people have had an opportunity to really think about what they think is a sort of a fair, equitable approach.
And I would just say that from where I'm coming from, it would be very helpful to me to hear from each of you, your thoughts about this, because my suspicion is that we are going to be not that far apart. But it would be helpful to have a sense as to if you feel particularly strongly about, I don't mean right now, I mean over the next few weeks. It would be helpful to know, where people are coming from. Keena, I'll get to you in just a second. Kevin, are you done with what you were going to say?
Well, just with regard to 4.2, B3 and 4, I think there needs to be some consistency with respect to those. I have other questions. If Keena's got a specific question that relates to that section, perfectly happy to.
Okay, Keena, why don't we go to you?
Okay, so in regards to section 4.2, excuse me, I also wanted to bring attention to section B, number 6, regarding members may not publicly display their yard signs, bumper stickers, or public commentary. Bringing up this comment and due to the fact that the landscape for how people support candidates has changed greatly.
Yeah.
I believe this is a conversation I might have brought up individually with one of you at some point. I think this is also one that bears much consideration.
Keena, are you saying, I mean, part of what you're saying, as I understand it, is yard signs and bumper stickers, are one way that, or two ways that people spread the word. But nowadays, they can also spread the word online, on social media, a whole variety of other ways that are not covered. And I think that it makes sense for us to figure out. It's almost, to us, it doesn't matter what the means is. It's, we have to decide whether we have a concern about board members openly expressing their views about elections where we count the votes.
Exactly.
And I guess my question for you is, are you suggesting that you're not sure you want to have that limitation at all, or just that you want it to apply to all different types of media?
So I would like it to apply to all different types of media. In addition to that, the nuance to which how we are sharing information online. So for instance, there are many candidates, regardless of political party, that sharing information regarding the public in terms of a resource or an event that's applicable to everyone, regardless of party. And then of course, there's information that you share on behalf of the candidate in terms of a fundraiser. So just kind of thinking about the nuances of that regarding that particular section would be great to discuss for
Yes.
our next meeting. Just
I
want to
think
bring it
that's
to the attention of the team.
That's great. And thank you for bringing that up. And I agree that, I mean, we shouldn't favor old media over new media or new media over old media. That basically we either have we have to decide what our policy is about those kinds of open expressions of support, and whether we consider that to be something that's a problem for the board, because we're supposed to be the impartial people who count those votes. We're also supposed to be bipartisan. So in that sense, the argument could be made that we can all openly do whatever we want and we cancel each other out. I don't particularly agree with that argument, but that is an argument that, that could be made. So,
Well, I think Keena's brought up a good point, which is
Yeah.
social media needs to be addressed in some fashion. We
Ab-
sort of chatted
yeah.
about this last week.
absolutely.
I don't know that much about social media, so I think I'm going to defer to people who know more about it in terms of their ideas about what's the best way to approach it. So.
Well, and I understand also, I think I understand what Keena is saying is, if I'm on social media and I retweet a candidate saying that there is a nonpartisan resource available to people, is that considered to be a problem for us? Because it's coming from a candidate, and I can make arguments in both directions on that. I think if it's their own event, then that's a different category. Then we're kind of promoting a candidate. But if but I think we have to decide what our and I'm not an expert either. But I do think that our rules should be, you know, kind of across the board. Daniel.
Kevin, so given some of the suggestions around the timing, but also how we meet, you know, just want clarification because as you know, how important it is for the public to get access to whatever we do, and especially these meetings and the details of the meetings. Whatever recommendation we're going to be considering will meet the Maryland's Opens Meetings Act, right? In terms of notification to the public and.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's why I said this is a sort of an introduction for you to think about these issues, but this is going to have to be addressed at the July meeting and this September meeting. I think probably a deeper dive into the specifics in July, and then perhaps if there's consensus moving forward with adoption in September, which is really the timeline that was followed in September of 2019.
That takes me to the follow-up around channels by which people access or gain access to information. I think it would be good for us to consider that as well, given, as we all know, there are multiple channels, but also there are new channels. So for us to consider not only, in terms of the Maryland Opens Meeting Act, but also what are the ways that we looking to get this information or our information in the hands of many people, especially people who may not have access to the traditional channels that we have.
That's a good point. So the other issue that I wanted to sort of highlight in 4.2 is number 9, which is petitions. There is a petition being circulated right now on term limits. And please keep in mind that as a board member and as the board attorney, you're not permitted to sign a petition. Just keep that in mind. That's kind of been, I don't think there's much wiggle room in that regard, because that kind of falls in the category of support for a specific either candidate or question that you may arguably have to go ahead and address during the canvass or on, during the election cycle.
And Kevin, under 9B, you're not allowed to circulate the petition either. Right?
Yeah, my advice is you don't have anything to do with petitions. You can't circulate it, you don't comment on it, you don't sign them, you don't do anything with them. They ultimately get to the Board of Elections to go through a verification process that's done by the staff, and ultimately the election director makes a determination as to whether there's sufficient number of signatures for either a county question, which obviously requires much, it needs more like 30 some odd thousand valid signatures, or a charter amendment, which requires 10,000 valid signatures. But yes, you can't circulate, you can't sign, you just shouldn't endorse one way or the other, anything as it relates to, the petitions fall into, to me, is the same category as either a candidate or a political question that's going to appear on the ballot. So moving on to 4.3BE, this is a conflict of interest provision. The section itself does not read correctly, but it also, in essence, says that a member shall recuse himself or herself and shall not participate in a matter if the member has provided support during the current campaign through a contribution, volunteering, or petition. Or, I'm not sure exactly what the rest of it says, because there's the words missing from it. But we're going to have a very long canvas, and it's a struggle to get 4 people present for the canvas for the entire time, because it's such a lengthy process. As currently written, a contribution to a candidate that appears on the ballot, whatever the position is, this currently reads that you should recuse yourself from voting on that issue,
even if it's $5.
even if it's $5. And so again, this is ultimately for the board to consider, but that seems rather restrictive.
Well, Well, especially when we are disclosing them every board meeting, supposedly with the idea that disclosing them allows the board to decide if they think there's a conflict. It would not necessarily make sense for it to automatically be one.
Correct. Correct. I distinctly remember the conversation 4 years ago where it was, well, if we got to a recount, as we did in Love, Paul, or in the county executive race, you know,
Twice.
really the recusal part that the board would either, the person would they would recuse themselves and or by unanimous vote under the bylaws, the board could vote to recuse that person. I remember Mr. Shalek raising the point, which is, well, to me, it would make a big difference if you gave $2,500 or you gave $2,000. They're really not really in the same category. So this is the section I think the board needs to go ahead and look at and see how they wish to handle this moving forward. 4.5, just a minor part, and I'll include it though. We still refer to 4.5 level of effort with absentee ballots. We don't have absentee ballots anymore. We have vote by mail ballots. So we need to clean up the language with regard to that. Article 5 addresses 5.1 has the roles and responsibilities of the board. And number 1 sets forth to carry out all duties assigned under the election law article. So, and the list is lengthy. But I'm going to send you a list of the board duties. While the board's not involved in the day-to-day operations or day-to-day activities of the election law office, when I send you what you have, you'll see that the board does have a number of duties and responsibilities, obviously, with regard to the oversight of the elections. And I'll make sure that I get that to you. Couple other little things that we just need to clean up. For me, under 5.3 B1, it says that the council to the board will attend all board meetings, which of course I do, and attend all canvas sessions. And you may wish to consider modifying that where I'm not attending necessarily all canvas sessions. I would be there for board referral sessions because I'm required to under Maryland law. But this costs you a lot of money for me to sit around for the entire canvas. So I pointed out as potentially a way to go ahead and limit legal expenses if it's if you don't necessarily. I'll be there for whenever you want me there, but
I haven't observed too much sitting around from you at Canvas, Kevin.
well, that's true. And again, I'm just pointing it out. That's something for you to consider whether you want to build in some flexibility, as needed with regard to.
Sure. And there's obviously a difference between our deciding to have you there because we need you there and are being required by our bylaws to have you there when if there were not a need.
Correct. So there's just an issue in terms of some flexibility with regard to that. Under 5.4 personnel management, it references the state personnel and pensions article, and a number of local boards of elections are actually covered by the state personnel and pensions article. Montgomery County is not. Montgomery County is covered by the Montgomery County merit system. And I think we need to clean this up to go ahead and just basically that it complies with the Montgomery County merit system. And I know that it talks about semi-annual performance evaluations of the election director and all employees. And Boris, do you do evaluations of all employees every 6 months?
So we have annual performance evaluations that are conducted for the staff. So distributed among the supervisors. So you have a part that you discuss what the expectations are, then you have annual overview where you put everything on paper. The evaluation itself.
Okay, well, we need to change that to annual evaluations. If you're doing them every 6 months, my Lord, you could never get any other work done.
Right. And I don't believe we've done them every 6 months for the elections director either, at least not to my knowledge. my understanding was that they were done on an annual basis for the election director as well.
Okay. So those are sort of an overview of the bylaws. I'll go ahead and reduce this to a memo so you'll have it as you go ahead and think about this moving forward. And this topic is raised again at the July meeting. Does anyone have any questions for me?
I have one, but Alex, you go first.
The timing, Kevin, was the intent that it would be raised in July because you would want to have the amendment go into effect in September before the election year?
Well, I think there needs to be further discussion in July, and then if there's consensus with regard to what the changes would be, that the board could then move to at least accept a motion to begin the process of accepting the new bylaws in September. I mean, that's assuming there's no August meeting. If there's an August meeting, then there'll be discussion at the August meeting.
Right. And what I was going to ask is related to that, because I thought that there was a provision of the bylaws that says that amendments to the bylaws have to lay over for some period of time. And I don't know whether this is considered an amendment to the bylaws, given that it's a new board, or whether it's considered new bylaws. And I'm not sure if that should matter, because I would think that some of what we're talking about, we would want to at least have a period of time where people can see what we're talking about and not just necessarily discuss it and implement it at the same moment.
I would recommend that you treat it as an amendment to the bylaws and that the introductions occur at one meeting and then the formal vote occur at the following meeting. I think that allows the public to at least an opportunity. If they miss a meeting, they would be able to at least comment if they wish to.
And if they were to comment and we wanted to change something, do we have to lay it over for another month, or can we change it and then implement it? If we make it like a small change.
I think minor changes can be made at the time of the adoption.
Okay. So the goal here is that we do our best to have as much of this discussion as possible at the July meeting, with the idea that we adopt it at our September meeting. Is that
correct?
And then between July and September would be the opportunity for people to see what we've done.
Correct.
Okay, everybody.
I think, David, 4 years ago, we really had two people that worked on wordsmithing sections that we thought needed to be clarified.
I don't remember the details of that, although it's entirely possible that I was one of those two people.
I think you were.
Yeah, but
I think you were.
Right. We certainly can do something like that if the board feels like that would be useful. I was thinking that we might start just by each of us letting each other know what our thoughts are on some of the bigger issues. But let me take that one under advisement as to kind of how we proceed from there. And I'm not sure how much of it is going to be, or if any of it is going to be controversial. It sounds like we all have a similar idea that we, of trying to modernize our bylaws to deal with the world as it exists, not as it existed however many years ago. And to take out some of these things that contradict each other and to make decisions about what we think actually is a conflicts issue and what isn't. And I think that's kind of the biggest issue that we have to think about. Any other comments on the bylaws? Kevin, did you have anything else for us?
I do not.
Okay, then let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which I believe is Boris's presentation. The organization and key activities of the Board of Election staff.
Okay, just give me a second to bring everything up. Okay, so I have shared the presentation with the board members. The copy is available on the website. It's a lengthy one. It's 70 slides. It was not meant to explain every detail because it would require even more slides and more time. Our goal was to present the election process, the role of the staff in that process, touch up on the role of the board in certain aspects, with understanding that as we go through the election cycle, as we go through the election year, we will be revisiting a whole number of these processes going forward. Whether that will be like the selection of the early voting sites, outreach, as we just mentioned now, polling places, drop boxes, or anything else. So I will, as I say, I will try to go through these 70 slides. I have my colleagues here with me in case there are more detailed questions. But as I said, this is not, this might be the first time that we are talking about some issues here, but certainly this is not the last time because they all will come back to the board's agenda as we follow the election calendar. So this is a very short overview. We start with the statement of the Board of Elections as the agency, where we emphasize our role to register the voters, conduct elections, assist anyone who is seeking elective office with the candidate filing process, assist citizens who are seeking to place questions on the ballot, and of course we preserve election data. Board of Elections operates on under legal requirements, whether it's at the federal, state, or the county. I just on this slide we have a list. We have a list of the main ones that are kind of framing our work and our activities as we go forward. We are talking about Voting Rights Act, Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, NVRA, HAVA that Mr. Fletcher mentioned already, Americans with Disabilities Act, and then on the state level, Constitution, election law, COMA or Code of Maryland regulations, and of course, a whole set of regulations that come from the State Board of Elections themselves. On the county level, of course, county charter is there, and personnel regulations that Kevin kind of touched upon as well in his reflection of the bylaws. The next slide, we presented the organizational chart, the structure of the Board of Elections with the board on the top, and you can see all the sections, the way we are organized, the staff that we have in the currently on the team, and the vacant positions that we need to fill going forward. You will see from the budget documents the total number of staff is 34. We are talking about 32 full-time and 2 part-time team members. I just wanted to emphasize this point that we did an overview of 2022 elections. We will go back to that presentations towards the later part of the year. This is exactly the presentation where we touched upon on all the outreach events and distribution among the zip codes. But again, we will get back to that one. I just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware of the plan. Budget process is something that is ongoing activity for the staff. It's ongoing activity for the board, staff reporting, board reviews. Board has a big role in designing and sending forward the budget when we go ahead to present it to the county executive and later to the council. In essence, staff prepares the draft. Budget board will have a budget committee, I believe, the last one had, that will review the proposal. The board as a whole will review the proposal itself. It's on a director and the finance staff to meet the county executive and OMB to go through the budget proposal. Then the meeting is followed by the board members meeting with the county executive, and then we go to the council side. We first go to the committee level, then the full council as staff and the board combined. In the whole process, there will be whole set of questions that will come either from the county executive office, OMB, county council or the committee. It's on staff to produce the answers to all those questions that are sent to us. Annual budget appropriation, just very briefly, you can see the upward trend. I think that we welcome the trend, and our focus, as I said earlier, is to do the right size our budget to the extent that is possible. In election world, things do happen that we do not necessarily plan for. If we can anticipate certain turnout going forward, you know that just one change on the candidate who is joining the race might have a significant impact on the turnout itself, which projects on the cost of the elections going forward. Anyhow, the trend is the one that we would like to continue going forward until we hit that right size budget mark. When it comes to budget allocation, very briefly across the section, administration, water services, IT, and operations. This is based on the plan that was pushed forward for 2024. Expenditures areas, personnel is a big 40%. State Board of Elections bill is 31%. That's our share of the costs that are occurred by this at the state level. We pay based on the percentage of the voters that we have. Also, I think we have 70%, something like that, right? I think that we have 70% or 70% of the voters. That's how the cost sharing formula goes. Election judges stipend, it's 18% of the budget. This included the House Bill 1200 increases. Printing and postage is a big part, 5%, and all other costs are 6%. We do not operate in the vacuum. We do not conduct and plan and conduct elections by ourselves. There is a whole set of agencies in the county that we work with. Public schools, public libraries, it's a given for the polling places. We are talking about police, fire and rescue, all the activities that need to be conducted in the run-up to the elections. We work with the human resources, we work with the recreation department, we work with the intergovernmental relations office for the legislation that they're going for. So we tried on one slide to put all the agencies that we engage, that we work with in lesser or bigger extent in order to conduct proper elections. We measure our performance. Voter satisfaction is, of course, number one. There is a whole number of audits that we have to pass that we see as a measurement of our performance as well. Polling place evaluation by a third party. We are talking about League of Women Voters here. Of course, the data on the opening of early voting centers and polling places on time, overall wait times, and results reporting, how fast we do results reporting on the election day. There's a number of initiatives and the productivity improvements that we are looking for, that we are considering. Expanding opportunities for voters to request and cast their ballots. Permanent vote by mail-in voting is one of them. Early voting drop boxes that board previously decided to have 55 in the county, which simplifies the process itself. We are trying to plan properly and bring on board the temporary staff or the peak times of the election process when the workload is the highest. We are looking to reconfigure the facility itself, the space that we have to expand to facilitate the process better in the office. Of course, we are always trying to expand any use of the short messaging system, which proved quite useful, and for people to either register, update their registration, or request mail-in ballots. Sorting equipment, I think many times we have spoken about this. Our volume of mail-in ballots is the highest in the state. We have 260 polling places, which means ballot styles, hand separation of 100 and 150 or 200,000 ballots per those ballot styles would be very, very difficult and time consuming. I earlier reported in my report that IT manager is working with the tabs. We are trying to modernize communication with election judges and the whole system that captures their willingness to serve. And of course, we live stream election processes. Our board meetings are live streamed. We live stream canvas. We live stream the scanning. I believe we live stream LNA public testing. No, we did. And if I'm not mistaken, we live streamed even the manual audit that we did in February. So I'm pretty sure that we are the leading county when it comes to Maryland, when it comes to live streaming of everything that we do. When it comes to the cycle, pre-election preparation, election itself, post-election review, and the whole set of ongoing components, which are voter registration, mail-in ballots applications that are coming all the time. IT has what we mentioned before, maintenance of the equipment, charging of the electronic part of the equipment. On operations side, these are all the items that I report monthly to the board in my director's report, outreach, and of course the audits. Once we finish that, we restart the cycle itself. When it comes to pre-election cycle, budget will take a lot of our time because it's a process that it takes time, it takes communication, it takes a lot of planning, crunching numbers to meet the target. Staff will prepare and present to the board early voting sites to be selected for the next elections. The same will go for the polling places and drop boxes. There's a whole process here. It's regulated. There are deadlines. Some of them, or most of the times, we have to wait for those deadlines that are set by the state or the legislation itself. Pre-election preparation includes allocation of the equipment, ballot order, that's paper, election judges recruitment, training and assignment, and of course, recruitment and onboarding of the temporary team members. Election itself, I believe that I just listed the options that people have. Mail-in voting, early canvass is something new that's in the legislation. Early voting and election day voting is in person. Provisional ballot processing follows the early voting and election day, where we hear staff in the office researches every single provisional application or the ballot that was submitted through the centers of polling places. And of course, we move to the post-election day canvass and election results certification. Post-elections, we have a number of audits that have to be conducted. We are looking at comprehensive audit, ballot images audit, and manual audit that is done at the end. We, as a staff, do post-election analysis. There's a lessons learned period that we do internally, and then we participate in the working groups established by the state boards to communicate with our colleagues from other counties. Archiving is the last part of this process, where we put all the election material as per the archiving schedule. I'll try to go through this election cycle overview. We start with the voter registration. The main aspects of the work, I try to summarize it very briefly, is voter registration, list maintenance, updating voter records, registrar training, provisional processing of provisional ballots, petitions, and the number of requests that come from the general public about voter data access, MPI requests, and the overall customer service. Application options that voters have on their disposal, it's either online, in person, by mail, MVA or state designated agencies, or the same day registration during election process itself. We do verify. State designated agencies.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I'll spell things better next time. Voter registration verification. As mentioned, a previous presentation of the list maintenance, something that we will touch upon again. We are looking for the Maryland driving license or learner's permit or the ID. We verify against MBA records. We are looking for the last 4 digits of social security number, or we are looking for, if there were certain discrepancies that we could not verify, we are looking for people to show up with the ID at the polling place and to show it to the election judges at the spot. List maintenance, I believe that we did a presentation in March 2022, and we will plan ahead for maybe September or October to have that presentation again. I believe, I don't know what the board's president schedule is exactly, but we will adjust to that. This is just one of those presentations that will be available as we go forward. The next one is candidate filing. Small reminder, February 9th, 2024 is filing deadline. Candidates do register their campaign entities with the state board. Local candidates complete their filing here process in the office. We moved for the last few cycles to filing by appointment, which works better for the staff, works better for the candidates. Each candidate gets proper ample time to engage in conversation, find all the details they require. There's public financing option provided in the county if candidates meet the set requirements, but it's the state board and county finance department that are the bodies that follow the use of financial aspects and use of public funding. Offices that will be on the ballot in 2024, of course, for the primaries in general, we are talking president, vice president, U.S. Senate, representative in Congress, delegates to the national conventions, judge at the circuit court, and the board of education as a local races. We will have 3 races, 1 at large, and District 2 and 4. Polling place selection. This is what staff is doing now. We are checking and verifying the availability of the polling place locations that we used previously, which one of them will be available to 2024 election cycle. We are looking for new locations always. We are surveying them to check to which extent they meet the requirements that are needed. Going forward, we will present our proposal, the list, to the board. It will be on the board to approve that list, or basically require folks in some other different direction. November 14th is the deadline for the board to submit polling place plan to the State Board of Elections. What we would need to do in meanwhile, or as a part of that other process, once the plan is approved, we are looking at completing the leases and assurances for private facilities. We will coordinate with public safety for all the locations. Our work is ongoing with the county officials. We are talking about MCPS, school personnel, and all the private facilities. We are looking for any possible accommodation that will be needed under ADA and state directives. And of course, if the board chooses to change the polling place in any precinct, we would be required to send voter notification cards timely to all the voters who are affected by those changes. The next part is outreach. If you allow me, I'll just go very briefly because we will have more in-depth presentation in July. It's a year-round program. It goes on all the time. Education voters about voting choices of mail-in, early voting, or election day. We demonstrate voting equipment. We try to incite people to apply to become election workers. We pay special attention to the Section 203 of the Voting Rights Act, which talks about bilingual approach and bilingual judges that we want to have in different polling places. Future Vote program is something that's been going on for 20 years now, something that's been recognized in the state and nationally as a successful program. We're talking about students from 6th grade up who help the election process without touching election material or election equipment. We are talking about the young students who help dismantled, as you see, these blue booths, putting the signs and the posters outside, whatever is available. Younger voters, knowing that they come along with their parents, this is the kind of generational support as well, and engagement, and a very good tool to bring bilingual election officials in terms of their parents to the polling places as well. As I said, outreach presentation is coming up July 31st. Recruiting, again, very briefly, we try to maintain an active database of all the election workers. We supplement that database after every election cycle with the new applications that are received, that are coming in. Recruitment is year-round program. Of course, it increases in the 6 months prior to the election day. This is also the time when we increase in size of the section with all the temporary employees that are come on board. Any voter who checks the box on voter registration application saying that they are interested to learn more about serving as election judge, we reach out to them. We do generate reminders, we send emails, we engage in phone exchanges with anyone who is interested to serve. Election workers do staff multiple parts of the election process. A nursing home and assisted living program is the one that starts first. We're looking for drop box attendants, bipartisan teams who will collect the mail-in ballots from drop boxes throughout the county. Of course, canvass, both pre-election day and post-election day canvass, and of course, early voting and election day election judges. Election worker program positions. This is the slide where we just try to summarize them. Later today, the board will have a more detailed presentation of those positions where the board will take a position on the stipends that will be given to judges going to election worker going into 2024. Training. All the election workers are required to go through a certain amount and level complexity of the training, depending on the positions and role they will have. There are two parts. One is online, where we require everyone to read the manual, take online quiz. The second one is in person, which is more hands-on approach, where everyone has to touch the equipment and go through the processes that they would experience at the polling place itself. We offer walk-in refresher training for anyone who takes the training maybe too far out or has something unclear. They are all welcome to retest the equipment, ask the questions or anything similar. We do run small size classes with the low trainer to student ratio. We have classes organized in multiple locations throughout the county. We used to have classes in the building, which is not possible due to the expansion of sorting equipment, additional equipment that we have for the early voting and the election day. But as I said, we are trying to expand our footprint that might give us additional space to restart the training classes in the building. Ballot creation and proofing. It's a state board that generates the initial reports for validation for the staff, for the board here. We proof every ballot style, both English and Spanish version, both paper and electronic version that's uploaded to ballot marking device. For 2022 elections, we proved 258 ballot styles, English and Spanish, paper and electronic. It was done by bipartisan teams organized here in the office. As much as we would like to plan when we will do it, we are the activity is very contingent on the election calendar and on the state. And ballots must be displayed and certified before election director signs off on them. Sample ballot. Let me just say here that I apologize. We have an image from 2018, and the year is off. Maybe the wording vote by mail, but the sample ballot was and still is, and I believe will continue to be in the future, one of the key outreach and information dissemination elements that the board does. Sample ballots are mailed out to all the voters in the county. We try to send them out before voter registration closing, which is 3 weeks outside of before the election day. Again, the process is very dependent on the calendar. Sample ballot cannot be sent to the print before the ballot is verified by the state. So this is the goal. This is what we would like to see. This is what we will aim to achieve in 2024. Equipment preparation and testing. I'll just go very briefly. IT timelines, just like any other section, like the stuff as a whole. There are timelines that we have to follow. They're either part of the election calendar or they are part of the system set by the state. We do the post-election maintenance. Every time we have to do the inventory of everything that was sent out, returned, that was in the building. This time we had to go through the commissioning of the poll books because poll books a new solution is coming up, and we have to inspect the old voting booths as I presented earlier what is going on. In the beginning of next year, we will start preparing equipment for the primary. We will do the testing for the regional collection network. We will do the retest signal for the early voting sites. Again, something we touched upon earlier for the communication between the poll books to track who voted when. And we will start setting up early voting sites that board will select going forward. When it comes to the new poll books, that's the system, that's the process driven by the state. There's acceptance testing. There will be mock elections that each board of elections will participate, and we will do another round of signal testing and for the new solution that will be in place in 2024. When it comes to equipment preparation, we are talking about election wear, we are talking about memory sticks, we are talking about scanner, ballot marking devices, and of course the DS850, which is the high-speed scanners that we use for scanning mail-in ballots as they come along. When it comes to preparation for logical accuracy, we are talking about allocation of the equipment, peripherals, integrity reports, formatting memory sticks for all of these pieces of equipment, creating the media and loading election data to the memory sticks. And logic and accuracy is the step that comes on the end, that all the testing and paperwork has to match, has to be verified. New electronic poll book solution. This is our expected time frame and something what we have ongoing conversation with the state. Integration testing is ongoing. We will be retrofitting the existing poll book cases to accommodate new solution. We expect poll books to be shipped to us in July, and this is the time. As I said, we have IT temporary team members who will leave the office end of June, but they will need to be we will need to bring them back the moment the poll books are delivered by the state to us. There will be statewide testing, of course, by the state, and we'll be awaiting for the procedures from the state that we will need to follow to prep all the poll books as we go forward. Polling place supply and ballot packing. Big process, lot of pieces. Everything is scheduled out. We are talking about ballot order and allocation that is done well ahead. We are talking about all supplies that go to each early voting center or the polling place. We are talking about verification of those supplies and everything that was packed for the transport, and those green, orange, and blue bags, everything that's being picked up by the election judges right before the election day. Here, you just see a small, really small piece of the ballot order from the last time. These are the small things that are essentials at the polling place, the early voting sites, and this is how the setting up just layers and layers of bags look like as we prep for the election. Oh my God! Vote by mail. I apologize for it. I think I changed it everywhere, but it seems not. Mail-in voting is an option that is becoming more and more popular among the Montgomery County voters. We all know that we are the larger jurisdiction, but our voters really like mail-in voting, and they particularly like those the web delivery or printed home ballots. I think that if you look at the overall volume of those ballots, I think that in 2022 general election, our volume was equal to Howard, Baltimore County, and PG combined, or something like that. So applications for the mail-in voting is ongoing throughout the whole year. As of the last election cycle, there's an option for the voters to sign up to be on the permanent mail-in voting list. It's literally just checking another box in the applications that they are completing. Anyhow, again, as we might have 10 or 30,000 vote by mail or mail-in ballots previously in 2018 or earlier, our current permanent list is somewhere 85, 86,000 voters. So this is an option that is very popular, and it's here to stay in the county. Uniform and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, we have a high number of Yokawa voters that are our citizens and military that are not necessarily in the county, but they are registered in the county. When we go forward, we will come across our voters who at some point in their life lived in Maryland, and Maryland was their last address in US. They moved abroad. Those so-called federal ballot only voters, but that's a process that will be addressed as we go through the election cycle, and something that will always raise questions by the canvassers, like why this, but so we explain everything to everyone. Nursing home and assisted living program, we are mandated to visit nursing home assisted living program, assisted living facilities in the county, depending on the number of beds that they are providing to their customers. I think that limit was threshold was 50 beds. We have a number of facilities that were grandfathered into a program with a smaller number of beds. We have bipartisan teams of judges who visit nursing home facilities, help voters fill out the applications, help with the ballots, and bringing those ballots back to the building. Mailing, emailing, and faxing mailing ballots is ongoing process as we go. And of course, receiving all the ballots that are returned, whether through mail, through drop boxes, or in person. We have to prep them, count the envelopes, separate them per ballot style, receive them in the system, organize them in the batches. That's what we just simply call prep and staging for the canvas. Early voting primary dates are set for the both primary election for May 2nd, start for 8 days. General election start October 24th. Early voting 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. In 2022, we had 14 early voting sites. We had 4 alternate sites. September 18 is the date when the state should give us, provide us with the notice, or give us, inform us how many early voting sites we could have in 2024. That number is based on the number of registered voters. If I remember properly, once we have over 600,000 registered voters, we are entitled to have 13 early voting sites. Coincidentally, September 18 is the board meeting as well. October 16 is the deadline for the board to submit all the forms to the state board for approval of the early voting sites. This is all the research and something that we will prepare for the board going forward to inform all the aspects of the research that go into selection of those sites. Again, coincidentally, October 16th is the board meeting date as well. So these two deadlines overlap with the planned board meeting dates. Next two slides, I just listed those early voting sites locations from 2022, both 14 that were used and alternate sites. I have to make a reference to early voting site number 14. As I said, we are legally allowed to have 13. We can add another early voting site as per agreement or in agreement with the governing body. In 2022, Bauer Drive Community Recreation Center was added with the support by the county executive and the county council. So legally, the state will give us 13 early voting sites. The board may opt in agreement with the governing body to select and add center number 14. Early voting in general. Wait times for the early voting days are available on our website. We update wait times hourly for the early voting. Those updates are collected through the process that there were early voting site uploaded by the center managers. It's the center managers and chief judges that are running early voting centers. We have help desk open in the building throughout 8 days of early voting. When the early voting sites are open, we have runners who go back and forth between the board, the building itself, and the early voting sites to distribute or deliver whatever is necessary. We do daily intake of critical documents, and we are supplying the sites with what is necessary. Election day, 231 polling places in 2022. I just made a reference here that we had 236 in 2018. There was a House Bill 410 that was adopted in last legislative session, ties up the number of polling places going forward to the number we had in general election in 2018. The Code of Maryland Regulations, COMAR, there are changes presented to regulations that try to explain process going forward in light of House Bill 410. I shared those draft regulations with the board. They were presented to the state board on June 20th, and I believe that a public comments period started, which would last for 30 days. November 14th is the deadline for the board to submit a polling place plan to the state board. That would require the staff to do our part, present it to the board reviews, sends it back to us for the refining or corrections, get the final approval, and then submission to the state. Voting hours are 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. There's a polling place support program. League of Women Voters is the role. We have a help desks. We have a public lines where voters can call in, and we have voters who walk into a building, ask questions. We are here. We are open to answer from the time when the polling places are open as well. We have 6 regional collection centers where the upload of results is taking place, and the election night returns. It's return of water, ballot supplies, and the equipment. It's a process that is organized in the back of our building with the support of the police that manage the traffic and the different county agencies that provide team support, I would say, to pull this process off. Canvas is literally going through all the mail-in ballots that were sent to us, opening the envelopes, preparing them for scanning. All board members, or 7, are sworn in as the board of canvassers prior to the beginning of the canvass. That includes both regular and substitute members. Early canvass starts 8 business days before early voting begins. For the primary election, that will be April 2022. That's as per new legislation. In the 2022, that was a court order. We did bit of canvas in building in 2022 at the very beginning because the number of return mail-in ballots was small. We still did with the 12 teams a few thousand ballots a day. Once the volume is greater, we needed a bigger space. What we are looking for in 2024 is going back to Montgomery College in Germantown, or if we manage to acquire the expanded space here, that would enable us to accommodate up to 50 bipartisan teams for the canvas. That's early canvas before the election day. After the election day, we have so-called canvas 1, canvas 2, and provisional canvas. These are all post-election day canvases. Canvas ballots are scanned in post-election and released, and the results are released daily. You will see at the bottom the key dates. Canvas usually goes from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. We are good at starting at 10. We are not necessarily always finish at 6, always stay a bit longer, but that's our plan. Canvas goes on until all the mail-in ballots are canvassed and all the process is completed. I already touched upon a bit about canvassing mail-in ballots. If I just can go back, I think that early canvass for the general election falls on the Columbus Day. So I don't think it's a holiday in the county, but what is
it's a state holiday and a federal holiday. So I guess we'll have to figure out what business day means.
That's correct, because I looked at the state calendar still keeps this date on. So we will know as we go forward. It's possible that it was not brought to their attention yet, but
okay,
it will be, as you said, what is the business day? Are we going to start Friday before, as you
right
earlier, David? So
yeah, okay.
As I said earlier, we try to have 50 bipartisan teams to do the canvass. We distribute mail-in ballot envelopes to all of them. Teams review each envelope to determine whether this was timely received, if the signature is there. Those that are timely received and with the signatures, they're opened, ballots are removed, and envelopes are set aside. Ballots are reviewed for compliance and ability to be read by the scanners. So ballots that cannot be read by the ballot scanner or web delivery, these printed home ballots, they need to be duplicated. There's a separate process where the bipartisan team of canvassers takes the returned ballot, duplicates it on the brand new ballot style, brand new copy of that ballot style provided in the canvas. Any ballot that is not timely received, that has multiple ballots in one envelope, where voter intent questions could be raised about the ballot itself. These are the examples of the issues where the ballots are referred to the Board of Canvassers for the review and determination. Any ballot, any mail-in ballot envelope with no signature may be cured by 10 a.m. on 10 days after the election. We are talking, so second Friday after the election day, 10 a.m. is the cutoff time to potentially cure missing signature. Timely ballots that are all in compliance, that go through the canvas, we send them to the scanning room so they can be tabulated after election day. Or early canvas, if you are talking about early canvas, or to be scanned and tabulated that day when we are talking about post-election canvas. Board members or whoever is also interested had a chance to see the scanning room that we have now in the lower level. Ballots are transferred to the scanner room in batches. These are the same batches that were prepped for the canvas, that were kept through the canvas and such delivered to the scanning room. The goal is to have the batches count from canvas to match the count that goes through the scanner. This is how we reconcile our number and making sure that every ballot is counted. Audits and certification. Post-election audit is the part that we do before the elections are certified by the board. We are talking about verification of the election night results. We are doing comprehensive audit, which includes mail-in, provisionals, accepted, rejected, accepted in part, and everything. Will have third-party independent tabulation of the images, ballot images that is also being conducted. And all of this process also involves reading chief judge's logs, different reports produced by the roamers in the course of the voting, voter complaints, help desk tickets. Any ticket, any call that goes to help desk is recorded. And those tickets are kind of learning tool for us as well in the part of investigation. Chief judge logs, we rely a lot on our chief judges to record everything that happens. They are polling place because they are the ones who are at the spot. They are the ones who are familiar with everything that happened firsthand. That is the election process. I try to be quick. I don't know how successful I was, but
there was a lot to cover. It is a very comprehensive overview of our process, and I would summarize by saying we're much more than election day. That's the tip of the iceberg. Is that, with no disrespect meant towards election day, it's just that there's so much that goes into what we do. And thank you, Boris, for that overview. I'm going to go to board members with questions, and Kina has her hand up. So Kina, you're first.
Okay, so my first question was actually going back to the canvas. I know we talked a little bit about getting a confirmation for when canvas will occur for the general election in November. But as far as the number of days a canvas occurs following the election, is that a 2-week time period, or is it a 10 business day time period? Or is it until the votes can be?
It's until we're done.
that's
And I would say that I'll give you my comment, and then I'll let Boris and others give theirs. But first, I just looked at the state election calendar, and they say that Columbus Day is a holiday and that they're going to start the next day. I'm not sure how they do that legally, because the law says 8 business days before. I would think they'd have to go earlier, not later. But at the moment, their calendar says we're going to start the canvass on that Tuesday, not on that Monday. The law says that we have to accept the ballots that arrive up until 10 days after Election Day. So if they're postmarked on Election Day, arrive on the second Friday after the election, those are legitimately, allowed. And many of the jurisdictions in the state will finish the canvass on that day. And I've been on the board for 12 years, and we have never finished on that day. Because we're Montgomery County, we have more votes than everybody. And it just seems, and of course now we have more mail-in votes than everybody in addition to everything else. So in my experience, it goes beyond that, and how far beyond that depends on our schedule, on when we can get canvassers and when we can get staff and when we can get space, and on the preparation that our staff does in order to have those canvass days. And that's about as well as I can do, but Boris probably has more to add to that.
I'll just very, very briefly. I think that David summarized it very nicely. We canvass until we are done. That's the bottom line. There are a few options that could help us to finish earlier rather than later. Number one, in 2024, we should have a big canvas room available from the day one. So we don't need to go in the small canvas at all. However, that room becomes kind of useless if we don't have ballots. So we have to work with our voters to return mail-in ballots as soon as possible, as soon as they are comfortable to vote that ballot and send it back to us, because that will be the key. So plus we have to be aware that finding 100 canvassers to be available on any given day, it's a task in itself. And especially it's a task in itself when they all have to be, when they have to be from different political parties. We do not set up one-party teams of canvassers. So we would rather have less teams, but we stick to the bipartisan system. So it will be part of our push, and I believe, and I hope it will be part of the board members' push for every voter, like the moment you're ready, please return your mail-in ballot, because that's a preconditional fall for us to start strong as early as possible.
Hey, Boris, you know what may be helpful is to send all the board members the minutes from the canvases for the primary and the general.
Okay,
Kind of give you a sense of the number of days. And one of the options is to participate virtually. And as we get closer, that may be
for board members.
for board members.
Yeah.
So I know that I've been thinking about a system that may make it so that it's easier to organize everyone's calendar and to make sure that we have 4 people either there in person and or participating virtually in the event that someone is unable to actually make it up to Germantown.
may I just add, when we get closer to legal deadline, when we can, legal date when we can start early canvass, there will be conversations about canvassing dates, the schedule. And I think that board members will be looking at their schedule and how to provide quorum that's necessary. The staff will have our own input because we can canvass for certain numbers of days in a row, and then we have to go back to the building to prep. It's not we do not have space or capacity or human capacity, number of people to keep prepping and canvassing as we go. So it's a process. I think that for the last elections, we were able to canvass 2 days in a row and then make a day break. That would enable us to prep another 15 or 20,000 ballots, because there's a lot of paperwork that needs to be done that we need to apply so we can reconcile all the numbers as we go through the canvass process.
And Kina, as I'm sure you recall, we were still at it after Thanksgiving, even though 10 days after the election was before Thanksgiving. So that gives you a sense. And of course, we'll have more ballots in almost certainly in 2024 than we had in 2022 because of the presidential year. Anyway, we're going to be talking about that schedule probably a lot between now and then, because we need to get the right number of people to help, but it has to be on a day where 4 of us can be there, or else they can't do it. So it's kind of a balance there. Alex.
Mr. President, I just wanted to say when I chuckled after Kina's question, it wasn't because it wasn't a good question. It was because she might be forgiven for not knowing how many of us felt that the canvass might have become the bane of our existence last year, and that it seemed like it would never end. But it's very demanding, and probably one of the most unforgettable experiences you will ever have, Kina, is hand canvassing a stack of web delivery ballots. I can't wait for that next time. Well, with that, Mr. President, thank you.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is that we do have external factors that affect when we want to be done. And the first one is normally that the Board of Education members by law take office at the beginning of December. So we want to be done by then. I don't know what the law would say would happen if we're not done by then. In a presidential year, we also have the deadline for Maryland's electors to be included in the Electoral College. I'm pretty sure that we'll all get thrown out of office if we don't make that deadline. I think in general, we're going to spend a good portion of the month of November. We're going to spend we're going to spend half of October depending on how many early ballots we get. And, and how often we do it before the election is going to be dependent on how many ballots we get and how many canvassers we have and how many board members we have. But we're going to spend a good portion of the latter half of October. And then after the election, we're going to be very involved for much of, of November. And usually we certify, the last two elections, I think we certified on November 30th. So that gives you at least a sense. Any other questions for Boris about, obviously there was a lot there. This is not a situation where we say, speak now or forever hold your peace. You definitely get an opportunity to ask more questions when there's, when you've had more opportunity to kind of delve into the details and, and as you see more of what's going on. But I didn't know if there was anything that spurned any other questions.
As I said at the very opening, sorry for interjecting.
Sure.
Everything that was presented today is coming up our way. So we will be touching upon every single aspect of the presentation as we go through the election cycle. So there will be place and time and answers and questions, I believe.
Yes, and part of what we're trying to figure out for the upcoming board meetings is what to cover when, to make sure that everybody gets the information that they need. And so if you have thoughts about that, let me know so we can, get things on the agenda. And that's also the purpose of our priorities discussion later on in this meeting is, to try and get some of that. And I guess with that, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda because I don't see anyone else's hand up. The next item is old business. Is there any old business? Okay, see no old business. We'll move on to new business. And the first item of new business is the election workers stipends. Boris, did you want to present first or did you want a motion first?
If you don't mind, I just wanted to very briefly explain the logic behind the document.
Please.
And first, many thanks to Chris and recruitment team for putting this short document together. We tried to capture in one document all the positions that election workers will help us with, will perform as we go through the election cycle. If I remember properly, last year we had separate discussion about the canvas pay. Now we put everything in one presentation. This list and the proposed levels of stipend pay also reflect the House Bill 1200, the requirement to increase the minimum pay for election judges who serve early voting election and election day, a minimum of $250 per day served, $50 per training completed, and $100 for anyone who is a returning election judge to early voting or election day. So those changes that came as a result of legislation are here, as well as a previous board's action on canvas from the last year, and any adjustments that will bring certain equitable approach through the hiring and the payment of anyone who will come to the board and help us to run a successful elections. If you look at the document itself, in the first column, we listed all the positions that we would have. You will see that we have chief judges, closers, we have VOPs or voting operation judges. We have a half-day shifts, we have a full-day shifts for the early voting and polling place, and the list goes on. We didn't just focus on the election workers who are at the in-person voting sites, but everyone who is supporting that process as well. We are talking about runners, people who are bringing, someone needs a new extension cord, go and bring it. Like everyone who makes election day or early voting happen. We are talking also about election night support, election workers who will be here with us helping us with intake of equipment and ballots, everything that was sent out to the polling places. Of course, we include the canvassers, both full day and the part day. We include the nursing home program that I touched upon earlier, and we include Dropbox runners. We will have a number of bipartisan teams who will be visiting. Each team will be assigned a route to visit of number, let's say 6 or 8 drop boxes at least once a day, starting 6 weeks before the election day, and then going to 2 times a day. I think state regulates a week before. Last week before the election day. So we try to capture all the positions. We try to reflect the new legislation. We try to reflect the increase based on legislation to equitable reflection on other positions as well. And we try to be fair in our proposal. So I would be happy, Chris, to answer any questions if the board will have.
Okay, I think before we get into questions, I'm gonna recognize Diane, who I think wants to make a motion.
I want to first say, Boris, I think that this document is tremendous. Having worked in a number of these election cycles and having been around as long as I have with the Montgomery County Board of Elections on the outside, I mean, I learned a lot seeing this, and it's really is greatly appreciated. So with that, and given all the thoughtful process that went into this with you and your staff, I move that we accept the staff recommendations for the judges' stipends. Does that cover it?
Yeah, I think it does. In the entire 3-page document that
Okay.
that Boris has given us. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, a second, moved by Diane and seconded by Alex. Diane, did you have anything else you wanted to add to your comments on that?
I can't think, no, thank you, not at this moment, just that I think it is really a incredible depiction of all the manpower that goes into this. So at this point, thanks.
Okay. Are there other comments that others would like to make before I make comments? Because I'm going to go last. Looks like no one has comments to make. Okay, well, Boris, first a question for you. On the last page, it appears to me that, and you can tell me if I have this right, the canvas workers, the nursing home program, the Dropbox runners, and the standby employees, they appear not to be covered by the $250 minimum. Is that correct?
That's correct. The bill, if I recall it well, refers to the service provided by the election workers on the election day and early voting. So it's very, I cannot say limited because we need still 4,000 of those volunteers, but it's focuses on early voting and election day.
Right. So basically, if I understand it correctly, everyone on this chart on the first 2 pages, plus the first entry on the 3rd page. If I have to admit, I'm not trying to understand the first entry on the 3rd page. I'm just trying to figure out who's covered, because as I understand it, it's $250 per day. So if somebody works a partial day, they don't get $250.
That's the approach, because if we look at the VOPs and chief judges, let's say on the election day, we are talking about our volunteers who will spend 16, 17 hours.
Yes.
And their pay is $250. We have people who will, volunteers who will serve half day.
Right.
And we tried it would be appropriate to recognize the fact that the amount of time dedicated is not equivalent. Right. Some positions that, as you pointed out, Dave, rightly, for example, early voting runners, we are talking about shifts that last up to 5 hours. Some of them are shorter because the number of the early voting sites and the routes that are created. So trying to preserve equitable approach of equitable pay across the positions to amount of time needed, very committed, and the complexity was our goal.
So basically, first of all, I want to thank the legislature and the governor for signing the legislation that increased the election judges' pay, but they've established a minimum, and you have established a framework for how to use that minimum and still maintain the differences among the different jobs, which I know is a Herculean task, and I appreciate what you and the staff have done in order to do that. We obviously know that for most of our election judges, they don't do it for the money. They do it to serve democracy. We still, even though they don't do it for the money, we are happy to have this recognition of their service, and I'm hopeful that we're going to actually, well, we'll see what the vote shows, but I know that across the board, I mean that in more ways than one when I say across the board, that we are very thankful to the election judges for their work. I should also mention that we're thankful to the county executive, Mark Elrich, and the county council for funding it, because the state mandated the pay, but they didn't necessarily provide us the money. We really appreciate, Boris, what you and the staff have done to give us a thoughtful, comprehensive pay plan for our election judges. This does not mean that we are only interested in election judge pay to the exclusion of canvas workers' pay, to the exclusion of temporary workers' pay, to the exclusion of part-time, full-time staff, to the exclusion of full-time staff. I personally believe that we should be looking at all of those staff. I think that our staff is underpaid. Alex made the point earlier about, are looking at the issue of when people are turning down jobs that we're offering them. I think we need to consider whether pay is part of that issue and look at that as well. This does not detract from that at all. This is a different category of people. I want to look at all of them. So hopefully in the future we will have that opportunity. And then the other thing I wanted to mention that I know my Republican friends would mention, we in Montgomery County have a particular need for Republican and unaffiliated judges. And we want to particularly encourage Republican and unaffiliated voters to consider being election judges for us, so that we can maintain our bipartisan method of administering these elections. We also want to encourage bilingual and multilingual voters to serve, because we have a lot of languages that are spoken in Montgomery County. 1/3 of Montgomery County residents were born in another country. So we definitely have, we have a need for bilingual and multilingual voters who can communicate with county residents. We're going to try and reach out to voters of all backgrounds to help us with with our recruiting and retaining election judges. So anyway, any other comment before we vote on Diane's motion? Okay, all those in favor, and I would say, Alex, that Ami appears to have, well, maybe she's back. I can't tell. She's back online. I can't tell if she's here or not. All those in favor of Diane's motion, of the voting members, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I cannot tell whether Ami is here. So Alex, I gather you second.
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Are you voting aye?
Yes, I'm voting aye.
Okay, so it is unanimous.
Thank you.
So thank you, Boris, and thank you, board. And now we have a framework that we can use for recruiting our judges. Okay, the next thing on our agenda for today is something I put on the agenda, which is a discussion of board priorities. I did not intend for this to be a terribly lengthy discussion. It is more in the category of trying to plan ahead for, there are a number of things that the board has to do. And then there are things that the board looks at because we want to look at them. I view our election system in Montgomery County as being really good. I just want to make our really good system even better. But taking that as kind of where we're coming from, I wanted to hear from each of you in terms of what your thoughts are and what some of our priorities are. I am going to take the prerogative to start for some of this because I've given a lot of thought to this, but I definitely don't have a monopoly on any of the ideas here. Obviously, we have the standard stuff. Okay, we have to select early voting sites and polling places and drop box locations, and we have to recruit and retain election judges. I think we have to find ways to do our work more efficiently, including getting accurate results as quickly as possible after the election, which is probably the subject that I hear more about from elected officials than almost anything else we do. We need to look at recruitment, and as I just said, we need to look at recruitment and retention of permanent staff, temporary staff, and election workers, including election judges and canvass workers. And I want to look at appreciation events for all of those populations. We need to look at staff pay and working conditions and work-life balance. I personally believe that work-life balance will help us to be more accurate and to be more efficient in what we do as opposed to the opposite. I would like to give an opportunity for all of our elected officials and the public to tour our building and get a sense of the complexity of our work, as well as our need for space. I know that some board members have done that recently. I know that we've gotten some elected officials to do that recently. I want to give everybody the opportunity to do that. I think it's a very impressive thing for people to see all the different things that we do, in our building. And then I want to keep track of election-related legislation in Annapolis and communicate with our legislators about it when it affects us. A lot of times they are proposing things that we can help their deliberations by giving them a realistic view of what their proposals will look like when we have to implement them. And because we are the ones who are the implementers of legislation. So those are the things that the initial things that I put on my list. What I'd like to do is I'm going to alternate between members of the majority and the minority, so that we all get a chance to give our 2 cents and then throw it open to anyone who has anything to say. So I'm going to call on Ami next.
Okay, I've been thinking about this a lot, and actually I had some conversations with Boris about problems and issues as I see them. I think we have some communication issues. I think if you asked a random person on the street, they wouldn't even know that we exist. And I think it's an important thing to do to let the public know who we are and what we do and how we try to act as guardians of our democratic process. And there are ways to do this. I think we need to put out press releases when the board does something worth noting. I think we need to encourage an update of our website. You know, hey, the website, if you look at it, looks like it's 10 years obsolete in terms of user friendliness and style. And I think we would be better off to get participants to sign up to look at our meetings, which are open and on the web, if we had a more user-friendly site. I think if we had the issues that we are grappling with discussed on the website more clearly, and if we had what is called in the trade a fact page, which is answers to commonly asked questions that was easy for users to find and use, we might be able to reduce the load on the staff from the telephone calls asking questions. Anyhow, I think we need to look at the website. I understand from Boris that there are county constraints on what we can do, but I think we ought to understand those constraints and see what we can do to modernize within them. I also think we need to do other things in terms of the social media about the board actions that are important for people to know, like encouraging people not to use the web-based ballots because of the amount of extra work that they cause. I think things like that on social media might help us be able to do our job better. There were a couple of things that got started during the last board that never really got brought to completion, and I think we need to think about them. One of them is the issue of finding appropriate storage space at early voting sites so that people can leave their boxes of handouts and things like that instead of having to haul them out at 9 o'clock every night and bring them back at 6 o'clock the next morning. This is not a problem at most of the early voting sites, but it is a problem at a few, and we try. Alan and I tried to be a committee looking at this last time, but we never got all of it solved. So we ought to think of that when we are establishing where our early voting sites are going to be the next go round. There's also some technology that ought to be looked at. I discovered by doing some research about a year ago that there are some technical ways that would allow us to count both the web ballots and the mail-in ballots more easily, and that therefore could make our canvas more efficient and take less time. And I found the right people to talk to, but things got out of hand with the long canvas last summer, and I never got to finish that effort. And I think some of the technology that could help us needs to be explored further. And those are my priorities for this next term.
Well, thank you, Ami, for those. I would say that I'm going to go to Daniel next, but let me just say that I actually disagree with one thing that you said, and really want to emphasize something else you said on a similar subject. I disagree with the idea of it being the board's job to discourage people from using legally available voting methods. But I do agree that we should keep people informed about what they entail, both for them and for us. And I really want to work with you to follow up on whether there are any technological solutions that would make the counting of those ballots easier, because that's the, as Alex pointed out earlier, that's kind of the bane of all of our existence is, having to hand duplicate those ballots over and over again. And Montgomery County has the highest percentage of web delivered printed home ballots of any jurisdiction in the state. So, but we can talk about that, and maybe maybe others on the board feel differently about discouraging people from using legally available voting methods. But I definitely want to work on the, how to count them more efficiently, because if there are technological solutions, it would save a lot of time for a lot of people. Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I have two priorities. The first one is actually around recruiting, more specifically looking at the election worker program, right? So let's look at the existing system we have. How do we make sure that not only we're able to capture, but make sure we're also able to update, and as we're getting new application for all the various positions, how we're making sure that the onboarding process is not, is not causing people to say, you know what, because it's already hard to recruit, as we all know, for these positions. So obviously making the pathways easier and make it more joyful, right? That could really help. So that's one. And I believe it's also an opportunity for us to talk about the stipend, right? The increase that they will get, even though they're not doing it for the money. Because I remember when my son joined one of the feature vote program, and I was like, hey, you could get SSL. I was like, no, Papa, I want the money. But that was my son. That's not the regular election worker who are looking to do this because they care for our democracy.
It could be both, Daniel.
That is true, Mr. President. So again, look at the application. And also, I mean, I haven't seen I don't know if we have them in multi-languages, but another thing about recruiting is how do we make sure we reach out? And I know we're doing that when it comes to, translating some of the information we have into Spanish. That is amazing. And I know it's a capacity issue as well when it comes to, the top languages that are spoken at home here in Montgomery County. How are we making sure that we're able to reach those who feel comfortable to read and write, or just, read in their own language? Amharic is one, right? We need to look at that and see if we have capacity in Amharic. If not, what other county departments? I know there are county departments that offer language banks, for example, right? These are county employees who could lend in their expertise to translate. How do we utilize those tools? And I want to commend Boris and the team, because I saw all the county departments that they work with. That is just phenomenal. It shows how not only efficient, but also how collaborative the work of Boris and the staff at the Board of Elections. And then in terms of training, because as we're recruiting, like how we ensuring that we're engaging throughout. Well, of course, I know we're recruiting throughout the year, but how are we making sure we're also training all the various positions that we're looking to recruit for, and keep them as much as possible engaged. I mean, I don't know what is being done right now, but my goal would be how do we look at that, and in developing those information. I think one of the things, as I said, is the channels by which we can reach people. Right, there are certain are we looking at organizations, partnering with organizations? I know I've worked with the Deltas, the Delta Sigma Theta organization, for example, to do voter engagement. I've worked with the African Immigrant Caucus to do voter, but I've also worked with faith-based communities as well, right? So the goal is that as those are all places we could recruit, but those are all channels as well that we could use when it comes to recruiting. And then lastly is outreach. Outreach, I think we're going to discuss that in detail in our next meeting, but my overarching in terms of interest in outreach is really, I hope we're not one-sizing our outreach strategy, right? It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not just take this strategy and translate it into multiple languages. Those translations could be sometimes, many things could be lost in those translations. So the goal is that understanding these communities, ensuring that we have key stakeholders, trusted stakeholders who, we could partner with and work with, who could really give us, vital information. What are the things, or what are the ways to effectively reach members of those communities? And I know there are, again, other county department that could, maybe we could reach out to, but again, as I say, I really want to discuss in terms of not one sizing just our strategy, our outreach strategy, but making sure we are really, looking at different communities, especially those as we all know that we want to reach. And that also includes, again, folks who are in the receiving community as well. How do we reach people who not necessarily based on language, but based on geography as well? Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vice President. Diane.
Yes, thank you. I've got three, and I'm glad that when you and I talked ahead of this meeting, we decided that this wasn't going to be our forever after priority list. This is initially coming at you with things that just I've been thinking about. So pretty quick. When it comes to the mail-in ballots, this may sound pretty small ball, but I've had every election a number of colleagues and strangers or people who I don't know very well tell me personally about ballots that they have received at their residence that were not people who are registered at that residence. And this is by no means a criticism of our staff. We all know this is what happens, and this is part of maintaining voter rolls. But I have heard this from people who've actually had these ballots. I've heard anecdotally that they've told of other people who've had it, and I don't know how big the issue is, but
Have they sent them back to us?
no, and that is directly to my point.
Mhm.
A lot of people don't know that they need to send these back, and I've been informed that the ballots do say return to, but I think a lot of people may see the name, and I've verified this with some, and they simply, to be safe, tear them up, throw them away. In order for us to maintain the rolls and add to the requirement of non-activity in consecutive elections, we need to get those ballots back to the Board of Elections. So I would like to see some sort of messaging, education campaign, PSAs on something that simple that I have to say I'm embarrassed I didn't realize until I had this discussion in this last election cycle, that people need to take those and return them to the Board of Elections. And I'm not sure exactly what method that would be. But if we could let's just start with getting that message out and educating.
It sounds like one of the things, Diane, could be an FAQ like Ami was describing, that, because that would be a question that a lot of people, I've heard the same question.
Yeah.
Why am I getting this? This
Right.
person hasn't lived here for 20 years or
Right.
whatever.
And I'm thinking it may require something more proactive than having an answer that somebody seeks out.
Right.
Just affirmably getting the message out. And as far as along the lines of messaging, and I'm not sure, I think I may have not heard you properly, David, when we were talking about methods of voting, but forgive me if this sounds contradictory. I would like, this is not news to you because you've been on the board with me for 4 years. I would like to have there be an affirmative move to urge more people to vote in person. This is in no way, shape, or form detracting from how valuable the mail-in vote is for so many people who are unable to get to vote in person. But I have noticed, or maybe it's the way I'm looking at it, that there seems to be, to me, an oversized amount of information on mail-in ballots. And when we talk about the increased number of mail-in ballots and the amount of time it takes to process, and I just think that the public, if they could hear the message more of the availability, the incredible availability and value of our early voting sites. I don't want people to sacrifice or to forfeit their ability to vote if there's any thought that they might not be able to get there in person. I would much rather have people vote by mail than risk not voting. But I know that if that message were out there, I think it would be helpful. And I think that in the full picture, that message is getting lost. So I would just throw that out. We can discuss that later. And then the last thing is two of these are connected. Let me think. Oh, yes. A very robust effort to beef up the staff. This goes to what Boris had mentioned when we talk about canvassing. And those of us who have been through a couple cycles or a cycle know that there have been times when we have had to suspend the canvass because we don't have the ballots processed to be adjudicated or to be canvassed. I'm sorry. So I think that we need to think about staffing up the type of employee who we need at the office to process these ballots. I think the enormous numbers that we are seeing in mail-in ballots demands that we rethink the manpower on that level, and that we also look at expanding beyond the 50 tables. Now, I know we're going to get into the whole discussion about, obviously that leads to a question of, or a reminder of how tough it is to get people to canvass. And we can address all those, but I would like to throw out there that given the amount of time it takes with the increasing number of mail-in ballots and how they will be increasing, that we rethink how we can beef up. It's going to take budgetary, it's going to take an all hands on deck look. So I'll just leave that there. Those are my three right now. Thank you, Mr. President. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Diane. Kina.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. Okay, so as far as my top three priorities at this time, thank you, Diane, for the reminder. These are not evergreen, that they are ever evolving. At this time, my priorities are recruitment and retention, with a special attention to the retention part of our election volunteers. Also budget and operations, and especially important to me as a newer member to understand the foundation of the work that we do. And so being a part of that work is something that I would like very much to be a part of. And of course, this is actually what I mentioned earlier, branding and communications. I think actually the note was made for communications. I see it more as a branding for the Board of Elections. As I mentioned, many people off the streets don't necessarily know that this board exists or where this office is. And so with that, I think that there are steps that we can take to look at our strategy differently regarding our branding, especially as board members. I see us as the front-facing people for this particular office, and we are in a unique position, especially now with the age of social media and just frankly socialization in general, that we can utilize our respective nonpartisan affiliations and groups to spread the message and the work that we do here. The biggest place that I think will be very useful for us is community associations. So as I mentioned, my top three are budget and operations, recruitment and retention, and branding and communications, to which all three will provide more information and details as we continue on over the next parts of our term.
Absolutely. This is just the
Thank you,
movie
President.
trailer. Yes, this is not the movie, just the coming attractions. Alex.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I will try to make this shorter than the average movie trailer, given the lateness of the hour. And, you know, there may be other priorities that I will think of. I need some more time to reflect on this, but the one thing that has been in my mind a lot recently is I think we need to think about and to cost out creating a separate camera system for the mail-in ballot drop boxes that's under the control of the board staff and that can be readily accessible to any voter. I noted our election director's initiative about live streaming as much of our processes as possible. But the one thing we've never live streamed are the drop boxes. Of course, if anything could be more boring than watching the canvas sometimes, it would be watching the drop box. But nevertheless, I do feel that it's important to have a video surveillance system where the feed is available, because right now, the way it's run by the public school systems, in most cases, it's effectively inaccessible. And I think we could create a camera system, given the improvement of technology, at a reasonable cost that would be under our control. It would obviously probably require some kind of memorandum of understanding with the schools. But if it was focused right on the box and what happens, that's what I think is important, so we can give the public greater confidence that the boxes are monitored 24/7. And so with that, I will happily yield back any time I have.
Thank you, Alex. Margie. Last but not least.
All right, thanks, Mr. President. So I have 3 priorities that I was thinking of. I really do look forward to working with the board and learning from everyone here who has been on this board for many, many years, and like using that institutional knowledge to also inform the work that I do going forward. So that's something I really wanted to start off with noting. One of my priorities will be looking with other members of the board at salaries and pay and work-life balance. That's something that I think is very important. I think that, and also staffing up for really important and high volume work. This is the amount of work that the board has to do, and the lack, there seems to not be enough resources, or there, where time ends up being what ends up being lost is something that I think is really important. And I think that it will just improve so many different processes if we look at that in the budget. So that's something that's really important to me. The second thing is modernization of the website, resources, social media, just to make sure that it is also accessing people across like multi-generational groups. While there are some really great resources we have, I think there's ways we can also consider looking at people like in my generation. So that's something that I think that I'm really interested in looking at as well. And lastly, outreach, looking at bilingual, multilingual election judges and staff, as well as people from different parts of the county. And then lastly, looking at people who are younger to help with, to be election judges. I heard that our election judges in general, like the median or the average age is very high, and we're gonna have elections, many years to come. So there has to be a way where we're considering, if people are gonna eventually end up retiring out of being election judges, what are we gonna do? And the time to think about that, I feel like, is now. So like, I feel like those are the 3 things that are most important to me.
Okay, thank you all. I think we all should kind of just take those under advisement, keep those in mind, and kind of, I want to think about some of them we would want to start on very soon, and some of them are not the kind of thing you have to start on very soon. I want to think that through. But I think it was a very helpful conversation, and I thank you all for contributing to it. Okay, the next item on the agenda is what we used to call it used to just say action items, but what this is listing future action items from today's meeting, and I really should have put Boris's name next to that, because he is the one who keeps track of these, and then we will supplement what from whatever we remember. Boris, I am not viewing the conversation we just had about priorities to be action items yet. I think those are, for us to figure out. But what do you have on your list?
First of all, that simplifies my life. That would be quite few action items if I would take all the input from the board members for the next session. So
yes, and we want you to take your vacation, Boris, and you wouldn't be able to if you had to address all those action items. Yes. So
going forward, the action item is to have website updates section on the director's report. The request is made to share with the board members distribution of outreach events per zip code in the county for 2022 elections. as it was done. And the third one was canvas minutes. I added for myself packets to be shared with the board members that were shared for 2020 elections, because you need the whole packet to get the whole picture of everything.
Okay, but when you say packet, that's still
I
going to
mean-
be in electronic form.
It will be electronic form. It will
Yes.
include the minutes. It will include canvas days, distribution of the canvassers, all those.
Okay. Oh, yeah. You all going to know more about the canvas than you want. Okay, that's that's good. Did we have anything else on our list for today? I do know that the staff plans to issue a press release about the election judge pay in the very near future. So that's not an official board action item, but I do know that that's part of the plan.
That's correct.
Anything else anyone has that should go on that list? Okay, great. Thank you, Boris, for that. Okay, so approval of the minutes for May 15. Diane,
I move we approve the minutes as amended for May 15th.
okay, just to be clear, I think she's talking about the minutes as I sent them out at about 11 o'clock last night.
Correct.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, Keena seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all those opposed? It passes unanimously. Okay, the only thing remaining on our list is future meetings. And I'll just note that our July meeting is our next meeting. It is scheduled for Monday, July 31st. And the August meeting is listed as tentative. It is frequently not held. We will decide in July whether we hold the meeting in August. If there's a reason to hold a meeting, to hold a meeting in August. Does anyone else have anything for the good of the order? Alex?
Mr. President, is there a reason why we have changed the start time to 3:00 p.m.? That was a new one to me.
Yes, there is. It was for the convenience of some of our board members. I announced it, and I'm trying to remember when I announced it, but I believe I may have done it by email. But yes, that was the reason that we had moved to a 3:00 start time. I'm going to try and make our ending time not be as late as it was today, but we had a lot to get through today. But I know that for a number of us, there's a benefit to starting at 3 rather than at 2:30. So that was our thinking on that. Anything else? Okay, as I indicated in my email to you guys, but I'm going to tell it to the public. Robert's Rules does not require a motion to adjourn when there's no further business, so we are adjourned. Thank you very much. See you guys July 31st, if not before.
Have a good week,
Yeah.
everyone.
Okay.
Thank
you
you,
too.
everyone. Take care.
All right.
Hi, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Uh,